And because Mariupol is a city of 440,000 and Volnovka has 21,000, the chances of evacuating everyone in that slim corridor was slim to begin with. And now that it was the ceasefire didn't even go ahead, this is a really dire situation that these cities are under. Rita.
And Sarah, also give us a little bit of a preview, too, because, of course, we're waiting for him to fully address the U.S. Senate. He's going to do it via Zoom. This is extremely important. He has been pleading, and as you know all too well, we have heard the president say that deaths that come from here on out essentially are a weakness of NATO. What do you think he's going to say to the U.S. Senate?
Look, we can never really estimate what is going to be said, but we've heard many messages that have come from Zelensky in the past, and it's the same message over and over again. He's pleading for assistance, not just from NATO, but from the whole world. So we can expect much of the same. He wants assistance, he wants aid from all his foreign cooperators, whether it comes from ammunition, whether it's medicine, whether it's foreign workers, whether it is an invitation into NATO. So I think we are going to be hearing many of these messages coming out of Zelensky again tonight in that address that he will be making shortly. It is not far away now, so I can assume that is going to be much of what we are going to hear.
All right, Sarah, thank you very much. Great job there on the ground. Thank you, and you stay safe too, please. And everybody, taking a deeper dive into the latest on the Russia-Ukraine war now with the host of America Right Now, Tom Basile, is breaking it all down. Give us the lowdown, Tom. I know you have a great sense of sort of showing us on the map where everything is happening.
Thank you, Rita. Good morning to you. Let's take a look at where things are. As we said, we're waiting for Zelensky. He's preparing now to address the U.S. Senate this morning around 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. But let's go to the wall and take a look at the battle map. As you can see, there's a lot more red on this map every single day. Kharkiv has been completely surrounded. Kherson and Melitopol are now both in control of the Russian army. Mariupol is surrounded, and that's the area that we were just talking about, where that ceasefire was offered to the Ukrainians to allow a humanitarian corridor there so civilians can evacuate. Apparently, that has been suspended, according to the Ukraine Ministry of Defense, because of violations by Russia. Ukrainian officials in Mariupol say that the Russians have also bombed the train routes and other infrastructure, which would make it very difficult for civilians to evacuate to begin with. So for perspective here, take a look at the size of Ukraine. That's about the size of Texas. Getting anywhere of relative safety, particularly from the southeastern part of the country, is going to be very difficult, and it's going to be quite a distance. So again, that humanitarian crisis in that area is going to continue, unfortunately, to unfold. Now that the Russians have taken Kherson and Mykolaiv in the southern part of the country, watch next for a possible assault on Odessa. Odessa is the country's third largest city and its main port. That assault would be a two-front approach from the east and also from the Black Sea with the help of the Russian Navy. Some other big strategic moves that the Russians are making, if we could throw up the map of the nuclear power plants. As you know, the Russians are now in control of Europe's largest nuclear power facility, Zaporizhzhia, and we are hearing also this morning that reports that the Russians are only about 20 miles from this other major nuclear facility. Why is that important? Controlling electricity and essential services is critical to controlling the country. These large nuclear plants also provide the Russians with strong strategic positions that once they control, it will be very difficult to eject them from due to the high risks associated with conducting military operations around those facilities. Putin and the Russian army are also now being accused of war crimes for a variety of reasons by Amnesty International and the UN, especially the targeting of civilians as they step up their shelling of Ukraine's major cities and civil infrastructure. And then, of course, we have the refugee crisis now exploding. 1.2 million refugees flooding into Poland, Romania, Hungary and other countries. And, and again, this morning we do expect President Zelensky to be addressing the Senate, presumably to ask for immediate support for his people. This after NATO reiterated yesterday it would not enforce a no-fly zone. So, Rita, this continues to become a more and more dire situation for the Ukrainian resistance.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And boy, we're going to be watching to see what President Zelensky does say to the U.S. Senate. Tom, thank you very much. Terrific stuff there. And for analysis, let's now turn to former Undersecretary of Defense and also former U.S. Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Robert Wilkie. Secretary Wilkie, thank you so much. Let's get right to it because Russian forces announced a ceasefire in 2 regions for humanitarian reasons. I'm very suspicious of this, and we're going to get to that aspect. But first, there are reports that troops on the ground are not respecting it. What do you think? Is this expected?
I mean, this is a pattern of Russian behavior that goes back hundreds of years. Putin doesn't care about civilian casualties. I mean, this is a guy who started his political career by staging terrorist attacks with his own cronies on his own people in Russia and then blaming it on the opposition. So that's not part of his calculus. What is disturbing to me is 2 fronts, really. The administration's refusal to bring the Russian economy to its knees, to begin the process on the part of the Russian people of severely questioning where Putin is taking them. And again, having the United States rely on Russian oil. The second thing is forcing the Ukrainians to engage in miles-long convoys to go into Poland to get weapons and munitions that they would need to kill Russians. This administration has the latent capacity with the CIA to put munitions any place they want to, particularly in Western Ukraine. We are the best at doing that. The British are also good at that. We are putting unnecessary burdens on the people that this administration claims to support, and that is unacceptable.
Yeah, you bring up some great points. And I agree with you also on the Russian oil because it's blood money, because you know that money going to Russia for oil, not just from the United States, but also other countries as well. Germany puts so much of it, they take so much of it in. That is absolutely ultimately going towards the weapons that they're using against the Ukrainians. Why do you think this administration has been so tepid on saying enough? I mean, it's so interesting, and you know this, Secretary Wilkie, in the last few days, we've heard from Democrats as well. I mean, we heard Elizabeth Warren, we heard Nancy Pelosi, we heard Senator Manchin, all saying ban Russian oil. Why are we not doing that, even morally, to send that message?
Well, this pattern began at the beginnings of the Biden administration. They cut off American energy independence, and then they begged Putin to flood the market with Russian oil to keep the price of oil down. You have an environmentally radical administration. You also have an administration that is engaged in what I've described as faculty lounge lunacy. At the same time that they're allowing the Russians to fill their coffers with oil money, they are about ready to hand the Iranians over $100 billion. $100 billion that they will use to attack Israel, to attack Saudi, to attack the Arab nations that came together under the Abraham Accords. This is actually worse than anything Obama-Biden did, and yet we are engaged in this fanciful, as I said, faculty lounge pieties that will only get Americans and our allies killed, and we're not doing enough to help the Ukrainians.
To your point, first off, about helping the Ukrainians, what do you think that President Zelensky is going to say to the U.S. Senate? He's supposed to be speaking in about 15, 20 minutes from now. This is going to be a very important speech. Of course, it's going to be virtual via Zoom. All 100 senators have been invited. A number of them will be meeting from all over the country to tap in. How much of an effect do you think he can have on the U.S. Senate? Because this is a dire circumstance, as you understand, Secretary.
it will have an emotional impact. He will ask the same things you and I have been discussing. He will ask us to take down the Russian economy, which we have the ability to do. He will also ask us to open up our pipeline from our NATO stockpiles to give him the tools to kill Russians. His people are doing it valiantly. They've stymied 3 of the 4 axes of Putin's attacks on their country when no one thought that was possible. Russians are taking casualties. And when you talk about Putin saying he needs to mobilize the country, that means he's losing. He's losing on the ground. And sooner or later, the Russian people will start seeing empty chairs at the dinner table. And that's when it will come home to roost. But we have the ability to accelerate this process. But I don't expect much from this administration.
Let me ask you in terms of the fact that we know that 3 Russian generals reportedly have been taken out. It's really astounding. What do you make of that and the fact that, unfortunately, that 40-mile convoy is still out there, that 40-mile long one is sort of slugging along, inching towards Kyiv? How do you interpret that?
Well, we've seen the collapse in the traditional Russian military problem, and that is the average Russian soldier is ill-fed, ill-paid, ill-led. He's used as cannon fodder. That's the traditional way of Russian fighting. It failed in World War II. It almost failed in failed in World War I, almost failed in II, and was a disaster in Afghanistan. Those generals were to the front because they realized Putin was going to come to them and come at them because the attacks were failing. But that also shows the prowess of the Ukrainian fighters. This is a culture that enjoys killing Nazis and certainly enjoys killing communists/Russians, and they're doing a very good job of it.
Yeah, it is amazing. It's so impressive to see the fight and the civilians and, of course, the military there. But it seems like it's all hands on deck, and it's been astounding to see what they have done so far. Secretary Wilkie, thank you so much for your perspective on such an important day. Thank you very much. And everybody, let's check in now with Amanda at the Newsmax news desk for all the other latest headlines. Amanda. Welcome back to Saturday Report. I am Rita Cosby. President Biden delivered his State of the Union address on Tuesday, outlining Ukraine, his goal for domestic policies, and his stance on crime. And joining us now to break it all down is former New York Congressman Michael Grimm and also former Georgia Congressman Jack Kingston to discuss his speech. Great to have both of you guys with us. Let me start with you, Michael, if I could. The world was watching, and to see basically what would the president say about Russia and Ukraine. So far, he's imposed sanctions, just some staggered sanctions. But how would you rate his handling? I was waiting for this kind of pound your fist moment, Congressman, and I didn't see it. And so many people are saying, okay, well, we need a Schwarzkopf. We need somebody like that. Did you feel any sense of strength from him at that moment, especially when he was talking about this dire situation that's happening?
Absolutely not. But good morning to everyone. I have to say, I felt that I was in the twilight zone the entire speech. It was odd. He seemed awkward. Nancy Pelosi seemed very strange behind him. Just everyone's mannerisms seemed off. I don't know if they were terrified that the president was going to say something ridiculous, like Iran versus Ukraine, or who knows. But I think the world needed to see some strength from the president. I think Ukraine needed to. You just had a guest on from the parliament. They have been so creative. The world is behind Ukraine in a way that even I'm surprised how much support they're getting, which is fantastic, and they deserve it. But the president of the United States is the leader of the free world. He showed weakness, and he almost showed that he's completely disconnected exactly what's happening here. But that actually is consistent because he's disconnected from almost everything that's going on. It's really bizarre, and it was surprising. He showed that he was very, very weak, and that the Ukrainian people should only expect lip service from the president of the United States. It's not in him. He doesn't have that desire to really put his heart and soul into this crisis And that's
And it is such a critical time right now as we are waiting right now. In fact, everybody, President Zelensky from Ukraine is set to address the Senate. Let me ask you, Congressman Kingston, what kind of grade would you have given Biden based on his performance?
I'd give him a D-. I think it was 3 minutes worth of promise that followed by 15 minutes worth of dribble. And it was just the same old stuff. His cure for inflation was to spend more money. His cure for Ukraine, it was almost like he was giving us a good introduction to the speech, and then he switched to denounce the tax cut. I think that's why Zelensky's speech to the U.S. Senate in a few minutes is so important. He has got to convey to the American people, he's got to talk through the Senate and say, you haven't done enough and you did not do it on time. We need ammo, we need medicine, we need safe zones to get our civilians out of there. We need no-fly zones. We need unity of the world. We can't just fight with heart. We have to fight with weapons and ammunition. Your assistance right now as the United States has to be real. And that's what's been lacking. And if you look at the Biden-Harris administration, there's not much hope it's going to happen. So he's got to talk to the constituents of the senators to say, get Washington in gear. They're going to lead by behind, but the American people can speak through them to say, let's do something.
Yeah, he's got to galvanize them. I absolutely agree. And I'm sure he's going to be pleading very dramatically. Again, everybody, we're going to cover it when we get it here, too, as well. Congressman Grimm, what about our southern border? It was an amazing moment. I was watching, of course, the State of the Union like everybody else, like both of you were. And he said, we have to secure, we have to, protect our border, as if that's been their policy. Meanwhile, we have had so much illegal immigration with open border policies under this president. It was almost, again, like Twilight Zone.
It's completely surreal. There's no doubt about it. Even Democrats were shaking their head. It's the same as when he said fund, not defund the police, and secure our border. These are two policies that literally day one, the President of the United States, Joe Biden, was supporting, and now he's completely flip-flopped. However, only with rhetoric. He's flip-flopped with words. He has no intention of securing the border. If he wanted to secure the border, he simply would. We were building a wall. We had reduced the amount of illegal immigration significantly. We were putting other barriers and different technology in place to plug different holes that still existed. We were reducing the amount of illegal narcotics that were coming into the country. We were stopping trade of human trafficking, all that. We were doing that under President Trump. He stopped it, he reversed it. So if he was really serious and wasn't just pandering, I don't know exactly to whom he was pandering, but I think he just wants to show the world that he understands and he's not completely disconnected from what's going on in America. But I think it failed, it fell short, it seemed very trite, and quite frankly, it just seemed dishonest. And I think even Democrats could see that. It just was, I think, a big misstep on the president's behalf.
Congressman, thank you very much. We're coming up against a hard break. Both of you, great to have you here. We're going to have much more of our coverage right after the break. And welcome back. I'm Rita Cosby. Brands across the globe are limiting their services in Russia, while countries, counties, and cities are beginning to ban business with companies who have Russian ties. Let's welcome our great panel, fellow at the Independent Woman's Voice, Kristen Tate, and also political and social commentator, Lauren Chen. Lauren, let me start with you, because the bigger brands like Apple, Nike, Google, they all are limiting their services to Russians, not allowing customers to order online or use things like Apple Pay. Is this really hindering Putin and his big, wealthy oligarch friends, or is this just hurting the average Russian, Lauren?
Well, I think the idea behind these actions is that ultimately it should do both, right? Obviously, I think the hope here is that ultimately the Russian people feel the pain to the point where they are inspired to act against their own government. At least that's what I've been told. Unfortunately, though, considering that, Russia is not somewhere where the Russian people can just go and vote Putin out, you are putting the average Russian who may or may not support the invasion. Of course, we've seen a lot of protests coming out of Moscow in a very tough position. And although I think the actions of brands like Nike, they are notable, they are nothing compared to the fact that we've actually had news broadcasters and even, some internet service providers and banking apps. They've also said that they are taking action against the everyday Russian citizen. And that's where I really start to question these actions. I especially don't understand how restricting access to more information could possibly hurt the Putin administration when we've seen that he's more than happy to do the censoring himself. So it seems like a very strange move there.
Yeah, it is an interesting move. And in fact, in Russia, for example, if they talk against the government or give information that they don't like, they do show from Secretary Wilkie, too, as well, that why are we still getting Russian oil? Why are we not putting the sanctions on Russian oil? We're missing the mark, Lauren.
Definitely. We've actually heard Blinken now say that there's no strategic interest in sanctioning oil, which seems very counterintuitive. And I think regardless of what's going on in Ukraine right now, which obviously is this huge story, American energy independence should always have been a priority for the Biden administration or any administration. So the fact that even now when there are these tensions with Russia, we are still dependent on their oil, at least to some extent, not as much as Europe, thank goodness. But I think it represents a failure of diplomacy, a failure of economic policy, energy policy, just all around. This is something the Biden administration needs to fix. But instead, we're seeing actually Jen Psaki saying that negotiations are coming up with Iran and Saudi Arabia to get more of their oil. And it's like, if only there was a way we could stop buying oil from all of these oligarchs and these authoritarians. Wouldn't that be great?
And real quick, I want to get to Kristen, too. Your thoughts on that real quick, Kristen.
Yeah, I think these actions by these global companies are mostly virtue signaling that won't have a big impact. Biden is weak. He's not willing to do what needs to be done to actually hurt Russia economically, which would be to stop with the gas and oil. We were on our way to becoming energy independent under President Trump. Biden is taking us in the complete opposite direction, and he is inviting war right now through appeasement. The world is watching this weak leader. They saw what happened in Afghanistan. We got 13 members of our own troops killed and left $85 billion worth of U.S. military equipment behind. He is appeasing Iran right now. They are well on the way to getting nuclear weapons. And we can only hope that China doesn't make a move on Taiwan. So the world knows that Biden's a weak leader. And at this point, he's exposed America as a paper tiger.
Yeah, it is a very dangerous situation. And you're right, a lot of bad actors are watching. Both of you, thank you very much. Kristen and Lauren, thanks so much. And everybody, we will be right back. And welcome back to Saturday Report. I am Rita Cosby. LA County District Attorney George Gascon is walking back sort of the lenient policies after facing backlash big time, accusing him of being soft on crime. And this comes amid a recall election. And joining us now to talk about these policies is Los Angeles Deputy District Attorney John Hatami, who actually works for Gascon. And you know what's amazing, John? 97.9% of the LA Association of Deputy District Attorneys voted in support of the recall. This is the second one to try to remove him. What do you think the chances are of it happening this time?
The chances are really good, Rita, and thank you for having me. We basically had a DA, George Gascon, who came into office promising reforms. And what we got was a DA who implemented dangerous blanket policies based upon an inexperienced DA who's never prosecuted one case. These policies have resulted in a 15-year high in homicides, and it was based upon faulty data. And now he's saying, oops, and he's saying, I'm going to change my mind, when so many people have already suffered. And when it comes to victims, he's called the mother of murdered child uneducated and told her to shut up. When it comes to his own employees, he called them internal terrorists. When it comes to police, he called the sheriff a pig. So this is somebody who really is unfit to be a district attorney of Los Angeles.
You know, it's amazing. One of the cases that got a lot of headlines, as you know, was the Hannah Tubbs case. And this is now a 26-year-old convicted child molester. And this case raised so much attention. And he tried to kind of backtrack on it, say, oh, I didn't know about these jailhouse calls. Turned out, there's some evidence that he did. Walk us why this case is so emblematic of his soft on crime policies.
Basically, this is a person who brutally molested a 10-year-old girl, and he gave this person a sentence of 6 months to 2 years with no sex registration. This is somebody who doesn't care about victims, who actually blamed the 10-year-old victim, refuses to apologize for what he did, has caused a major problem within this community. This individual is going to be released. No one's going to know where he's at, and he's going to victimize somebody else. And so basically, we have a victim who was abandoned, who didn't get any justice.
Yeah, it is astounding, and it's amazing. Like you said, he's not even registered. And the wildest thing of it all, John, is indeed also that now he's a 26-year-old man who's going to be in a juvenile facility. John, keep us posted on that second recall. Thank you very, very much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Rita.
Thank you, John, very much. And everybody stay right here. The second hour of Saturday Report starts right now.